Hi, this is Rabbi Shmuel Paulin. Welcome back to the Light Unto the Nations show. Don't forget to subscribe. We got a lot of great stuff coming up for you. And this is going to be a great video because it's about the 10 Commandments and life. We're going to apply the 10 Commandments to life. We'll have a few things that aren't exactly related to the 10 Commandments, but are indirectly related. Let's start off from the beginning. And the first commandment is, I am God. Do not worship idols. So idols are statues that people would bow down to, and they're often made of concrete. And what's funny is the word concrete is the same word as concrete in English, as in something that doesn't change, something that is set. And what God is really telling us here is a very valuable life lesson. Never become concrete. Never become stuck. So don't be a left winger or a right winger. Don't become an atheist or a theist. You don't want to be stuck in any of these things. There are things on the left that are good and bad. There are things on the right that are good and bad. And there are things about being an atheist that are good. You know, the fact that they focus on science, it's a very good thing. Things about being a theist that are good is focusing on meaning and purpose and value and spirituality. This is good. You know, what you want to do is you want to be able to take the best from all sides and keep an open mind and use critical thinking to pick the right positions and be willing to change your position in the face of new evidence, in the face of somebody giving you an argument that sort of flips your way of thinking, like I had today about vaccines. I sort of flipped my whole opinion on vaccines based on an interview that I saw. But if I was concrete, if I was stuck and I was adamant in my opposition to vaccines, then I never would have flipped. I never would have come to a more valuable, more accurate and correct opinion. So don't be concrete in your views. When it comes to low expectations and high expectations, don't be concrete on either of them. So don't be like the law of attraction and just only think good things will happen to you. And don't think that only bad things will happen to you so you can have happiness when things work out better than you thought they would. Use both. Use in certain situations when you're getting ready for a meeting, imagine things are going to go great. And then when your pizza comes late, you imagine that things aren't going to go so great. So that when it comes at the time it comes, it's actually earlier than you expected. So don't be concrete. Always be using both sides for your advantage. Also, this tells us to believe in one God, which means that all events are connected. They're connected by a storyline. So it's important to not just look at life as life happening, but to look at it as a storyboard. Things are happening in a certain sequence at a certain time, and it's all very much the way that it's supposed to be. It's all like a movie. Everything is directed. Everything is absolutely preordained, and it's a story. And we should be enjoying that story. This fact that God is one also means that all your issues are connected and you can learn from one issue to the next. You can learn from one lesson that you learn to the next lesson you learn, how they're connected. Everything comes from one source. So even a bully that's bullying your kid, it's the bully doing it, but it was already preordained by God that it should happen. So you can't really control things in the way you think you can. Even Afghanistan, as terrible as that's working out, it was decided by God centuries ago, millennia ago, histories ago, that this should happen. So, in a sense, we can all just surrender to God. We can give up all this sense of control that we think we have, which is making us miserable, surrender and realize that everything is preordained and nobody can hurt us if God didn't preordain that they're gonna be able to hurt us. And if that is the case, it's going to be for the ultimate good. You're going to come out stronger. You're going to come out greater. We also don't want science to become an idol. Sometimes science is stuck on one thing, like making food more addictive. It can also be flipped around, and even though it doesn't have the same profit motive, but they really should be researching how to make food less addictive and more nutritious than it already is. How to get more nutrition from smaller amounts of food so we don't feel hungry and we lose weight. And everything can be better if science will be flexible and not just look at the profit motive and figure out ways to reverse things in the right direction. So also with transgender. So they're putting a lot of effort and energy into making men into women and women into men, whereas they could be putting energy into making men feel more like men and women feel more like women. That would require much less intervention. It would require radical surgeries, but you could use some hormones and some neuroplasticity to get men feeling more like men when they don't feel like it. The second commandment, we're moving along quickly here, is to not take God's name in vain. And this basically is telling us to tell the truth. It's the foundation of society. Society cannot run, it cannot function if people are not honest, if people don't tell the truth. And in your personal life, you want to tell the truth because it's a mess if you don't. One lie leads to another lie, which leads to another lie. You wind up with this big structure of lies, this evil structure of lies, and you have to keep up with it. You constantly have to remember what lies you've told and make sure that you're staying consistent with it. So don't lie. Don't get into that game. Don't get into that trap. It is a trap, and you'll have to keep track of all the lies, and it will make your life miserable in the end. Don't say, I swear I will do this if you do that. You want your words to have meaning. You want them to have power, and that means making them always true. Guard your words. The Psalms says, guard your words. True words have God's stamp, and they take on a certain power, and people will notice that you're saying the truth all the time, and they'll start to take you more seriously. The commandment number 3 is to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And this is extremely relevant to us today because we are all addicted to social media. We are on social media right now. And in general, it's making us more and more unhappy. And we also have studies coming out more recently that being on your cell phone all the time actually can cause cancer. So how wonderful is it that God gave us a commandment to unplug for an entire day, for 24 hours? The day should be Saturday, not Sunday, because that's the day that God commanded in this commandment. But it should be done, and we should unplug, and we should reconnect with nature and with our family. And we'll talk more about family soon, but I'm going to add in a couple other life lessons right now that don't directly relate to this commandment, but they just should be included in any list of life lessons. And the lesson is as follows: live life like it's a game, a movie, or a joke, because it's the same thing, as we'll explain. So if you're playing a game and you're avoiding the cones in the car, you might consider that really fun. You're avoiding the cones. But when we avoid cones in our actual car, we don't find it fun. We don't consider it a game. But it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. You're just avoiding cones. So why not make it into a little game? Constantly in your life, make everything you do into little games, and your happiness will go through the roof. And if any one of those incidences that happens in your life would happen in an arcade game, like if you had an arcade game about picking up, mopping up spilled milk, and you had a time limit and you had to do it really fast, you would consider that a fun game and you would pay a quarter to play that game. But if you're mopping up spilled milk in your kitchen, in reality, it's the same exact thing. So it should be just as fun. Make it a game. Make it just as fun. Also look at life as a movie sometimes, because if you break your arm or you get some kind of illness and you are revived and you get healed and you get better, well, that's like a movie. It's the same thing. If you would watch a movie in the theater, you would appreciate this illness or this breaking of the arm because it makes it interesting and because we come out a better person for watching it. So make all the challenges in your life into little movies. Imagine it's a movie and you're the hero and you have to make things work, and you will come out a greater person for it. Uh, Also look at life sometimes as a joke. If somebody spills ketchup all over your shirt, that would be funny if it were the Three Stooges. So on TV, it's funny, but if it happens to you in real life, it's not funny. Well, that's ridiculous. It's the same exact thing. So if it's the same thing, be happy in both cases. So everything should be looked at as a joke. Number 4, honor thy mother and thy father. We know from studies that the number one thing people on their deathbeds say that they regret is not spending more time with family. So this commandment is genius. It encourages us to spend more time with our parents, and this especially applies at the end of their life because it's karma. If they took care of you when you were a baby and you couldn't financially support yourself, then when they're old and they can't financially support themselves, you should financially support them. That would balance out the karma. So visit them at the nursing home regularly, set them up at the nursing home, support them financially, do everything you can for your parents because it will bounce back. Number 5 is you shall not kill. This is simple. We all know that you should not kill, but it's not so simple to people who were powerful like Hitler and Stalin. If they had followed this commandment instead of following their own logic, millions of lives would have been saved. So let's take the opportunity to talk about another life's lesson, which is not exactly related. But that's the idea of oxytocin versus dopamine. There are two hormones in your body, and they drive your life. Oxytocin is like a roller coaster. It's got ups and downs and ups and downs. And it's actually a broken roller coaster because it eventually, at some point, it breaks down. Dopamine is going for the hit of drugs, of alcohol, of sex, anything that is shiny, a shiny object. Dopamine is driving you to get it, and then once you have it, you drop. You emotionally drop, and you're depressed afterwards. It breaks down eventually. Everybody who follows the dopamine way of living eventually winds up with depression, anxiety, trauma. Something will go wrong eventually with dopamine. But then there's oxytocin, which is the hormone which releases when you're with family, when you're close with your spouse, when you're in nature, and when you're in a state of prayer with God. You get oxytocin. It's a wonderful feeling, and it only grows as like a roller coaster that never stops. It's a little bit harder to get on this roller coaster. You have to put in a little bit more effort to spend the time in nature, spend the time with God, spend the time in prayer. If you really spend time in prayer, eventually your heart will unlock. There will be a real rush of oxytocin, and you will feel amazing. Another life lesson that we need to know is about patience, because half of our life is like waiting for stuff. Half of the life we're not actually doing things. So why does God do this? Why does he make us half of our lives waiting for stuff like the movie or whatever? So how do you deal with it is the more important question. And the number one way to deal with it is to lower your expectations. So expect things to happen at 3 o'clock. And then if they happen at 2:30, you're really happy. If you expect them to happen at 2 o'clock and they happen at 2:30, you're going to be unhappy. So always expect it. Change your expectation to the further out time. And that will, so expect the line to move in like 2 minutes. And then when it moves in like 15 seconds, you're really, really happy. So that's how you beat the downer that is patience at many times. Also, make it a challenge, make it a game. We talked about making everything into a game. Stretch your patience muscles. That's what I tell my kids. And they all know it. Stretch your patience muscles. Just look at the whole thing as a big challenge that you need to overcome. Also realize God's providence. Again, like we said before, everything is preordained. So whatever time that this thing is going to happen is going to be the very best time for you to have it happen. Commandment number 6, adultery. Do not commit adultery. This should be simple because the whole point of marriage is unconditional love. That means whatever happens, I'm there for you. Just like a good friend is someone who, whatever you tell them, they'll still be your friend. Well, marriage is supposed to be like that. That's what marriage is. It's a commitment where you say that no matter what you do, I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not leaving your side. So committing adultery is non conditional love. Excuse me, it's conditional love, wherein you are not happy with your current spouse and therefore you go elsewhere. We'll talk in a moment more about being happy with your spouse and what that's all about. But Marriage is for people who are willing to play the game of unconditional love. If you're not willing to play that game, if you're not willing to commit to someone, no matter what, then you shouldn't be married. There should be no adultery, because adultery destroys lives. It destroys kids' lives. It's one of the worst things you can possibly do, and that's why it is in the Ten Commandments. Number 7, do not steal. Be happy with what you have. Do not engage in comparisons to other people. Comparisons are just bad rules. They're rules in your life saying, I will only be happy if I have that. Don't make that your rule. Make your rule, I will be happy if I try my hardest today. Then I'll be happy. Have a different rule. Don't be comparing yourself to other people. Keep to your mission, a mission that no one else can do. And your mission is to succeed in spite of your challenges and weaknesses. You may have physical weaknesses, you may have intellectual weaknesses, you may have spiritual weaknesses, but the entire point of your life is to succeed in spite of them. God knows you have these weaknesses, but what can you do? What can you accomplish knowing you have these weaknesses and succeeding anyway? Number 8, do not bear false witness. Don't talk bad about people behind their back. This is one of the worst sins you can possibly do, and that's why it's in the 10 Commandments. Because inside, this person you're talking about is just like you, and you wouldn't want someone speaking behind your back about you, so you shouldn't do it about them. The very first sin in the Bible, in this history, was caused by someone talking bad about someone behind their back. And that was the snake speaking ill of God. And that's what caused them to eat from the forbidden fruit and caused all the problems that we face today. So do not bear false witness. Do not talk bad about other people. Do not talk bad about other people behind their back, especially. Number 9, do not covet other people's goods. So keeping up with the Joneses will not make you happy. You will never be able to keep up with them. Even if you do keep up with them, you still won't be happy because you're going to want more. So you must learn to be happy with exactly what you have. Realize this is preordained, this is destined, that I have exactly what I have, and it is all that I need. Do not covet other people's wives. This is going back to what we said before about adultery. It's connected to that commandment. People spend their whole marriage going wide, and they need to go narrow. What does that mean? I learned this from Dean Graziosi. They go wide looking at everything else going on outside the marriage, and maybe if the time is right and I feel I need to, I'm going to commit adultery with this person. I'm going wide. I'm looking on my phone. I'm looking at people on Tinder. I'm looking for different matches, even though I'm married. So you're going wide, looking at lots of different people and seeing what there is out there. But if you want to have a good marriage, a lasting marriage, you want to go very narrow. You want to go directly into your spouse and get to their soul. Uncover and uncover and uncover until you reach their deepest depths. And you have that deep, extremely deep relationship with them that nobody else has, and completely block out everyone else. The word for marriage in Judaism is kiddushin, which means to separate. You're separating out this person to be for you, and you're going to study them and just live in their majesty for your entire life and never look anywhere else. So always in marriage, go narrow, don't go wide. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you will implement some changes in your life as a result of this. And I wish you all the best, and God bless.